Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond Extent podcast, a podcast dedicated to a chat between two environment artists discussing everything about the industry we work in. I'm Timothy and I'm joined by William, who is a friend and fellow colleague of mine. In this episode, we will be discussing the Unreal Engine 5 announcement, our early work, graphics getting closer to reality, and how artists are going to be impacted by future tech and workflow changes. There's lots of interesting stuff in this one, so let's dive straight in. Hi William, welcome back to the third episode, man.
Hey Timothy, what's up?
Doing good, man. We got some exciting stuff on our hands, right? We got
Oh yeah,
the Unreal Engine 5 reveal, the tech demo.
yeah. What a doozy.
Yeah. It was pretty cool actually. But I never get like super psyched up when I see stuff like that. Because I always just want to get into my own hands and start playing with
Yeah,
it. What do you think
yeah,
about it?
yeah. I'm. I feel similar. I'd say so. Obviously, it looks impressive. It looks great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of open questions, and like you said, I think you can only really, I don't know, get a feel for it and talk about it when you've had it in your hands, right? So when you start working with it, you'll see the problems it might have. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that with everything they've shown, that they have some incredible tech in there, and that it's going to make a lot of people's lives a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't expect it to be perfect. So I want to see what like the deficits are
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how it works.
It's like with every pipeline, right? Like every pipeline has its drawbacks basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like the thing that got me hyped was the dynamic lighting and just how
Hmm.
fluid that was. I'm so excited for that. Um, yeah, because I was looking at that dynamic light was called Lumen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
and then we had Nanite for all the crazy mesh stuff that was happening, which was pretty interesting too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the amount of detail in there is, I mean, it is pretty amazing. And at first, I was like, I was really skeptic of it because I thought, the ray tracing demo with the like the stormtroopers or whatever it was. That was,
Mm,
I don't know. It came out like 2 years ago or something. Everyone was really excited about that, and then it was like, yeah, but they're running it on like a NASA PC, but like I don't
oh
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the craziest graphics card, and everything is like, I don't know, it was like a $40,000 PC or whatever it was. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of felt the same way about this, but then I was like, oh wait, what? They're running it on a PS5.
Yeah, that was
So that
crazy,
was
right?
that. Yeah, that hit me over the head a little bit. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, me neither. That
For,
was one of the biggest things that because you know how these tech demos go, like you mentioned, like they're all running on like these crazy PCs in the background and you never get to see them.
yeah,
And then it's like, oh no, this is running on consumer hardware. And it's like, fuck man, that's so crazy.
yeah. I'm. I mean, I'm interested in how all that stuff plays out with memory. Just because if you have so many triangles, so many textures and everything,
Mm-hmm.
how like and of course this was a tech demo. It wasn't a huge level, right? It was like, I don't know, a little part of, let's say, an open world, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I wonder if something like, yeah, if we are going to have that amount of detail in bigger worlds. I mean,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course I want to be hopeful and I want to be like, yeah, this is how games are going to look in the next couple of years, but
Yeah, I
I'm
wanna I wanna play it. Like I wanna run around in an environment myself. And I also
yeah.
wanna see something that has all the AI logic in it, like all the quest stuff, like
Yes.
all the other gameplay aspects to it. Because this was just like a really simple. Um, I don't think we had any interaction unless, well, jumping over like a small chasm or something, or like
Yeah,
squeezing
exactly. And
through.
that and even that was like it was like a fixed point. It was more like a quick time thing. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, exactly.
like it was as linear as it could have been, which I mean, which is completely fine because that's not what they were showing. But yeah, exactly, like the AI thing. Just, I mean, thinking about like collision is like super expensive, and all that stuff. I don't know if maybe only the stuff that she was close to had collision. I don't know.
Hmm. They
Um,
probably do the same thing with optimizing the meshes in some way, right? They can
That they
probably,
only like they make the stuff that they show close up really nice,
yeah, probably,
or
and
yeah.
they like dynamically optimize it the further you go away.
Hmm.
That would be interesting to dive into. Yeah, because they haven't talked about that stuff. I think. Well, that's like too technical for such a tech demo showcase. Anyway,
Yeah.
they just want to hit people over the head with like, look at all the pretty stuff that we can do.
Yeah, but wasn't there a video like this for Unreal Engine 4? I
Oh
think at
man,
least. I think there was one, like an interior one with like showing the lighting, and of course, I mean it looked amazing, but it doesn't mean that everything made with Unreal Engine 4 will look that amazing,
yeah.
right? I mean that's the thing. It's I yeah, I don't want to be too enthusiastic about it. That's what I'm saying. It looks great,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, let me get my hands on it, see it for myself.
Yeah, because I always look back at the stuff that's coming out with Unreal Engine 4 already, like
Mm,
especially the mega scan stuff that has like no gameplay or no interactions in it, like the purely cinematic stuff. We can already reach that kind of fidelity. It's just the thing that's really interesting about this now is it transforming towards games, like actual lived-in worlds. But that
yeah.
does mean, like I mentioned before, like we need all the additional AI, like all the other game logic that needs to be transplanted on top of this, and then having it all run smoothly. Because I also think they mentioned that they had it running at 1440p at
Okay.
30 FPS at the moment.
Hmm.
So it would be interesting. Like I've been listening to some of the Digital Foundry breakdowns, and it would be interesting
Mm,
to see how they because obviously it's going to get more expensive the higher resolution it gets. Like we have like dynamic upscaling and all that stuff. But if you want to get it running at 60 FPS, that would be interesting to see how they're going to do that and what they have in store for that.
yeah, and I'd like to see another example. Like maybe I mean all these caves, these rocks, these statues, and whatever they looked amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about like a Watch Dogs type thing? Like a street full with like 100 people walking on the sidewalks, cars
Yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
around with dynamic lighting, and maybe there's rain and there's like reflections on the ground in the puddle. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm doubting that it can handle it. I just like to see how it performs and how it works with that.
Like a
Just a
giant
completely
open
different
world
thing.
type of thing.
Yes, yeah, more like an open thing with just a ton of dynamic. Like, I mean, of course they had dynamic stuff in there with like the rocks falling down and the what was it, like the cockroaches going
Oh
all
yeah,
over
yeah, the bugs on the floor
the
with like
tomb.
the
Oh, that was
particle,
that
the
was
particle
creepy.
system.
Um,
That was
but
really
yeah,
cool
just
though.
having like yeah, just like having a ton of AI interact and stuff like that would be interesting to see.
hmm I really like how responsive the whole thing was when she was walking through the corridor and like stuff from the ceiling opened up holes and how the light filtered in. Man, some of those shots were so pretty.
Yeah,
Especially
it
comparing it
looked.
to like if you do an interior and you have to wait for a bake and then you have to figure out how to do like dynamic open holes like that and kind of fake it through a system.
Yeah,
Oh man, it
yeah.
was such a headache. I was kind of hesitant on the last part of it though, when they were like, "Oh, this is the open world reveal," and they open up to like a giant outlook, and then she
Mm,
flies through it. I was like, "Yeah, this is all cool, but this is a cinematic." So
yeah,
yeah, I was a bit skeptical about that part. I mean, they want to show off that they can render stuff, right? And the
of
detail the
course.
detail was still there, like it was still lit beautifully. So I mean, they're nailing that side of it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm also really interested in how other studios are going to react to this. Because another interesting thing was that they had the business side of things, which not enough
Yes.
people talk about, I feel. Because,
Yes, I agree. It's a huge point.
yeah, exactly. Because they opened up basically every, um, how would you call it? Like every bit of income up until like the first million is for
Yeah.
you. And then they start asking revenue. Where
And I think
before,
before it was 3K a quarter, I think,
yeah, yeah.
right? Which I mean that's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like if
exactly.
you have like a like a little game, you put it on Steam or whatever, and it's like successful a little bit, then 3K a month isn't that 3K a quarter is definitely not crazy money wise.
But still,
But a million a
it can
year,
hurt you. Yeah.
yeah. But then a million a year, that's your game's got to be pretty big to pull in that kind of money, and then I think Unreal definitely deserves getting a piece of that pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they
Yeah,
say how much it was gonna be? Is it like does it go up? Do the rates go up the more you make? I actually don't know about that part, or is it just like a fixed amount after
that's a good question.
a million?
Actually, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
let's look it up.
Because it was really, really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see like all the indie developers just like being more free and being more open to do the stuff that they want to do because they don't have
Mm,
to worry about like bringing in at least what is it, like 3K a quarter. I mean, it's like you said, it's not that much, but then if you have to worry about that on top of all of your other expenses, like it's one less worry, right?
yeah. So this license is free to use and incurs 5% royalties when you
Oh,
monetize
okay.
your game or other interactive off-the-shelf products, and your lifetime gross revenue from that product exceeds 1 million US dollars.
Yeah.
So it's 5%.
So
I mean,
it's the same
that's
as the marketplace, I think.
yeah. So that seems pretty fair to me. Like
Yeah,
if you're
exactly.
building your game in an engine, which is let's just say that's a pretty important part of making the game,
Mm-hmm.
5%, that seems pretty fair.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't doubt that they're probably still gonna make plenty of money. Especially if their engine is as powerful as it seems, then a lot of people are gonna use it and then I mean
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all about branding and marketing and like making the engine seem like it's the best choice, right?
yeah.
Because like in the end, like Unity had dynamic lighting already in the previous version, or like the version that they have now.
Mm,
And Unreal Engine always had to fake it. Unreal Engine 4 had to fake it with like light propagation volumes, but they didn't really work that well. Like it was okay, but if you look at the leap that they made now compared to the one that they had before,
it's
it's fucking
yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
also really interesting in we talked about this before.
You're really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious how see now I need to get away from the interesting part. I'm curious how the bigger companies are gonna shift. Or well, I mean they're not gonna shift like from their in-house engines to like this engine just because they announced this. Like that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. No.
But maybe there's like parts of the bigger companies, well, let's just say Ubisoft, where they can use this engine to test smaller games and have like
Yeah.
smaller games come out using that engine instead of their other in-house proprietary engines.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a bigger deal for indie developers, or like companies like what is it called, Bluehole, Bluepoint, something that made PUBG, for example. I mean, of course,
Mm,
they're
yeah,
using Unreal. They're gonna use the next Unreal probably, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, but but yeah, I mean, maybe it will convince some studios to not spend the time and money to research and develop a new engine and just be like, well, I mean, I guess we're just going to pay these 5%, which probably is still cheaper than making their own engine.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's switching over to that. But like you said, I think a lot of big studios, um, you have that man, I have a great way to explain it, but it's not coming to me right now. Um,
Oh man.
Inertia. That's what it is. Inertia. You
Yeah.
have this inertia, right? Because it's a huge company. To change anything, it takes a lot of time because there's so many people that would have to get trained to work with this new engine. So That's why a lot of bigger companies choose to stay with older engines or older versions of software because they have their scripts, they have everything working, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't they don't need the new updates because they've made their tools in house already, and everyone already knows how they work. So why would they spend the time having everyone look at how this new engine works when their old engine might not be as powerful in some places, but they have the specific tools for what they need. And
Yeah.
I think if Unreal 5 is going to be anything like Unreal 4, that it's probably going to be a kind of a jack of all trades, I think, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of in-house engines have the benefit that they are more specific to what they're needed for.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm also curious how the 2D side of things is going to evolve, because this looks. I know that 2D is like a smaller thing in Unreal Engine 4. Like, I don't know how they call it, like paper 2D or something.
I don't even know. I did not even know that Unreal 4 had that
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I've never
it supports
thought about it.
sprites and all that stuff too. And I've seen some developers use it, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was all. It's always been like a smaller side of the engine, right? Because it's like, oh, we kind of want to
Yeah.
be this, like you said, like a jack of all trades engine. But then, yeah, are they still gonna go forward with that technology, or are they? I don't know how are they gonna do that. That's gonna be.
Yeah. I mean, my guess would be they would just cut it, but I don't know. Maybe they want to keep being like a competitor in there and like yeah, and still have like their foot in the door for that kind of market. But I don't know. To me, it would make sense that they completely focus their efforts on 3D because that's yeah, like I said, a lot of people probably don't even know that Unreal has a 2D option. No, or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, because I
Um,
think most people just have the preconception of like, oh, 2D and more prototype stuff is better in Unity.
yeah,
So I think people will still gravitate towards that engine for that. Maybe it would be interesting to see, like you mentioned, maybe they just say like, look, we don't want to focus on 2D anymore. We just want to focus purely on like high visual fidelity 3D stuff, and that's what they're going for with Unreal Engine 5. And then maybe they just cut out all the 2D stuff.
yeah. I think it's plausible.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, there's obviously like way more stuff that needs to come out before we can discuss this further, because man, this is such gonna be such a big change, especially for
Yeah.
all the Unreal Engine users. I
I,
also sorry to just interrupt, but I just forgot that this was actually a question that was posted on our Patreon, by
yeah.
one of our Patreons, by Shannon. Her question was basically regarding Unreal Engine 5, how do you think it will affect other engines such as Unity or in house engines? I mean, we talked about it before. I was really interested in that question too, but I just want to point out that Shannon asked that question too.
Shout out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, um, yes. So I mean, shit. Now I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh man, sorry to interrupt.
It's all good. Um, yeah, but one thing is, I mean, of course, I think they're gonna step up the game, right? Other engines, like other not in-house engines necessarily, but engines that are commercially available or that are free to use or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
They're gonna step up their game, kind of like Counter Strike did when Valorant came out. You know, there's a new player in the scene. You got to show what you got.
Hmm. Oh, did they step up how they did stuff then?
No, it's just like they just released updates like every week when before they would take their time. So I think
Oh,
they had
okay.
a
Yeah.
they had a couple things in the bank, and they also just like I don't know, there was some smaller stuff that they kind of just the developer had it. They were like, okay, I guess we're gonna do this now.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of like the same thing that happened when Apex Legends released, and they had like the pinging system. And then
Yeah,
other multiplayer games are like, oh, we kind of want to have that too because that's a really good system. So they just
yeah, of
start
course.
piggybacking off that design. Which,
Yeah, Valorant has that actually.
yeah, yeah. See, it makes sense. Like, it's a shift in, yeah, it's a shift in how we see stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think
Because
that's how.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, but I think that's gonna happen with the engines as well. It's gonna be people are gonna gravitate towards Unreal 5, and then the other engines will have to have their own unique selling points and their own strengths that they have to show off. Because if 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 everyone's gonna choose Unreal 5, then I mean that's
Hmm.
definitely not in the interest of Unity or
Or
any other
even,
engine, really.
yeah, even the consumers. Like I wouldn't
Yeah,
like that if everyone just used Unreal Engine 5, because then they can get stagnant and not innovate as much as they would if they had competition, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened with Autodesk, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah, get your shit together.
Yeah. I'm still a proud Max user,
Yeah,
but just want to say, give me them updates.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I'm not one people to judge for all these programs, because I used Max in the beginning for 4 years, and then used
Yeah,
Maya for 4 years, and now I'm using Blender. So I use them all. They all have their good strengths and weaknesses, and it's
yeah,
just what you get comfortable with, really. And it's kind of
yeah.
it's kind of the
Yeah.
same with game engines too, where, and in my opinion, like in my small artist mind, I
Mhm.
know that Unity is good for prototyping and 2D stuff. I know that CryEngine, for example, is really good at lighting. Like if you want
Mm,
to have lighting examples, I look to CryEngine. And then Unreal Engine is just the most artist friendly engine out there, and that's why I use it, because it's just so
yeah.
easy to use for me.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be an
Yes,
interesting
yeah.
time,
That
man.
and that's the thing, right? If Unreal starts to become that engine that can do everything well, that can do lighting, that can do like prototyping, whatever, everything,
Hmm.
then yeah, then it's gonna get yeah. Other engines are gonna have to change.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And I mean, I don't know what Unity's cooking up. I mean, I think they've, from what I've seen, they've definitely stepped up the game, at least like visually and stuff. And they added this node editor for shaders, I think.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. They completely redid like the PPR pipeline a while back.
yeah,
So.
so I mean, they're going in the right direction, and I've heard a lot of good things about Unity lately. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe they've been working on something themselves. So
Hmm. When is the
who
last time you
knows?
used Unity?
Whew, that
Yes,
is a great question.
it's the same for
I
me.
would say I would say it was when I was working in a little startup studio at like in my semester break from uni,
Yeah,
and we were working on this remake of a mobile game for another studio, and we were just pretty much doing a reskin of it in
yeah,
another
yeah.
universe, and that was in Unity. But yeah, it was I didn't do much in the engine actually at that studio. So
Yeah.
I and then the stuff I did before in Unity was all just 2D. It's what I showed you yesterday, that pirate
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that was really nice actually. We had a session yesterday where we were just going through our older stuff. This was off the podcast, so just offline. But it made me
Yeah,
think that it would be really nice to put it in some kind of video format and just show off like all the, like we mentioned in the first episode, like basically our art graveyard, where we go through all the abandoned projects and like all the stuff we did before this, or even before we got into the industry. That would make for an interesting
yeah,
episode.
yeah. And I showed you like one of the first 3D models I ever did. And actually, you might be able to dig out some older stuff because the first time I actually well I the very first time was when I was in like third or fourth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a dad of a student at my school. They were I think they were a programmer. Yeah, I think he was a programmer, and so we had a computer game like activity class or something. Like yeah, like you could go there after school, and we would make video games in Scratch. And then at some point, he actually uh, brought in a 42-page documentation for each one of us, and he printed out
Oh gosh.
um, for how to make a gingerbread man walk. Like how to model a gingerbread man and make him walk and light him in Blender.
Oh
So that
god.
was the first time I touched any 3D software when I was like, I don't know, like 10 years old or something, or 11 years old, and I thought this is the worst. I just want to go back to Scratch. This is horrible. There's so many buttons. I hate this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then the real first time was in an internship that I had for like that we had to do an internship for school, and I
Hey,
went to
it doesn't work like that. Like your first real time is your first real time. You're the
well,
gingerbread man now.
okay, all right, yeah, but actually, I think I actually never made the gingerbread man. I think I was like, yeah, I'm gonna work on my game in Scratch.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You're like, fuck this shit.
yeah. I don't know all these buttons. I hate, I don't want to.
Yeah,
What are you talking about? Pressing Alt and Shift and then right clicking? What's this?
yeah.
You know, I,
Because you were, what is it, like 10 years old?
yeah, it was crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like introductions to like a full 3D program at 10 years old. That's a little bit rough.
that's ambitious, but
Yeah.
but it was cool. And then how old was I? I guess I was like 14 or 15 when I did that internship, and it was really cool actually. It was just one of the artists pretty much was like babysitting me for the first couple of days, and then
Mm-hmm.
he would just let me watch tutorials, sit in the corner, and do 3D stuff. And I that's the first time I started working in Max and ZBrush, and that's where I made that gun that I showed you that was just like textured in Max.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I remember telling him when he when he told me how textures work and that you have to make UVs for stuff. I actually told him, or I asked him, is there people that just model and they don't do UVs and they don't texture? Because I like the modeling part, but now I actually love doing UVs. When we were going through my old stuff, a lot of the models were horrible, but the UVs were actually pretty good. So
Yeah, that's
I
true.
actually
Actually,
love, yeah, I love doing UVs, man. I got a thing for nice UVs because I think it's so, yeah,
you're
people
such a
rush
weird
them,
person,
people
man.
don't do them right. I know. I'm sorry.
I think it's
I
the
also,
first time that I heard anyone say, "I like." Well, no, I said it before actually, because there's something
well, there you
therapeutic
go.
to it, right?
Yes, but also it's such an important part, and I feel like people are undervaluing it. They're just like doing a quick, whatever it's called. I don't even know what the button's called.
What
They're doing
automatic
like
unwrap?
yeah, whatever, an automatic unrev, and then they just plop it all in there.
Yeah.
And man, you gotta put love in your UVs, man.
Well, sounds like my
So
life.
important.
Just automatic unwrap and then like pack it together and done. That's it.
Man,
Oh
you
my god.
animal, you animal. No, but it's I forgot what I was gonna say again. Jesus Christ. But yeah, UVs are important. Do your UVs and stay in school, right? Is that
Yeah,
what we're saying?
yeah.
Yeah,
That's basically what it
yeah,
boils down to.
yeah.
We were just talking about like how we got in well basically doing our first 3D work, right? That's what we were talking
Yeah.
about. And then it sort of morphed into like, hey kids, do your UVs.
I'm sorry.
No, no, it's fine. It's a good
Um,
lesson though. But oh my god,
oh,
we
I know
need
what I was gonna say.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't understand why people post their UVs on ArtStation because it can only like be bad for you.
Yeah.
Because most of the time I look at the UVs and the UVs are pretty bad, and then I think less of you, and I don't respect you anymore.
Wow, okay. So okay, you heard it here. If you ever want to get a job in the industry, try to avoid Will.
No, but yeah, sometimes I look at a beautiful model and everything's nice, and then for some reason they have the UVs in there, and there's like like strips that aren't straight, and they're just like wiggling all over the
Yeah, yeah.
place.
It's
I'm like,
not super bad, but you're kind of disappointed in it.
exactly, and then I'm like, oh, does this only look good because there's like a 4K texture on it? Because well, then you don't really have to care about the interpolation and the aliasing in
Yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
texture, I guess, if you're using a huge texture. But yeah, and then if you have good UVs, then it's just good UVs. No one's gonna send you a message on ArtStation because your UVs are so nice. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I might, but most
Yeah,
people won't.
exactly. Like you should be the first one doing it and just like comment on people's portfolio and just say like, "Man, got some really solid UVs there."
Yeah.
And just
The first time it happens, I'll do it.
oh my god, I was thinking about doing portfolio reviews at some point. It would be nice if we can do it together, but maybe not if you're only going to talk about UVs.
Yeah, I was just gonna be like, next.
Just be like,
No,
it's like, oh, can I see the UVs? Oh, I didn't post it. Ah, next.
next. No, yeah, we can. Sure, man. That sounds great, actually.
That would be really nice. Yeah, we
That
need to
actually helped me a
find one.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. It really helped me a lot. But I remember doing it myself at some point too, where I was posting UVs like all the way in the beginning,
Hmm.
and then with the which one is it? I think in Maya you have like the ugly green lines going over the entire model. They're not white. Oh my god! And I
Hmm.
posted them on ArtStation and was like, "Oh, it looks
It's a,
good."
it's a, it's. Oh wait, I think that's a max. Do you mean where the seams are? The green lines where the seams are?
No, the entire thing
Or
was
where?
green. I think I might have just used like a
Oh
different
yeah.
UV editor or like changed the colors of it or something.
Oh yeah, could be. Yeah.
Oh my god, but it looked so ugly. And your UVs look nice. Mine didn't look nice. I couldn't make nice UVs. I couldn't care.
I was actually looking at one of my models, and I don't know why, but for that one, I really fucked up in the UVs for my, and I'm not going to talk about it because then everyone's going to look at them. But yeah, one of
Yeah,
my
we'll
more
just post a link in the show notes. Just send me the link.
the one of my more recent models, like I don't know, it was like from a year ago or something. There was oh no, 2 years ago. It's fine. But yeah, there was some UVs in there that didn't look right. But I don't know. And then I was looking at the old ones with you yesterday, and they were all pretty good. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, they were all nice and
Maybe I
clean.
just maybe I just didn't care. But yeah, it's that's the thing.
Yeah.
UVs are important. And yeah, it's not even just that it's therapeutic, but it's yeah, like I like that when you're working on your high poly, you're pretty much doing creative work, right? You're like, of course, it's technical stuff in there as well, putting your support loops, whatever,
Hmm.
but it's more of a creative thing. And then for me, UVs, there, it's just a checklist because there's no like, for me at least, there's a right way to do them and a wrong way to do them.
Hmm.
Like sometimes you have to make decisions, but I would say I barely make a ton of decisions while I'm doing UVs.
Yeah, yeah. Like
It's
you're
and
not
and
you're
it's
not
more about
burning mental energy.
yes, and while you're doing the high poly, I would say there's a lot more decisions that you have to make.
Hmm.
And the low poly as well. Like, what are you going to keep in the uh, like what are you going to break down? What are you going to keep in the geometry, whatever. So when you're actually doing UVs, it's just okay. This is 45 degrees or whatever. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to blah blah blah. So it's yeah, it's a little break that you get. It's
Yeah.
just okay.
It's
Now I'm just going to do this. It's I don't have to think about this. I could just check it off the checklist.
hmm Yeah, also another thing I noticed yesterday is if you start modeling, like you're one of those people that just starts their first high poly model out there, please split it off into separate sections. Like it's totally fine if you're making screws to just have them as separate high poly models. Like I was looking back at my old work, and you did it too, where we like
Yes.
fused like all the meshes together because we wanted to keep them all consistent in one mesh group. Oh, what were we thinking?
Yes, I really do not understand that. Like, I was looking at this super old tank that I had made, and it had like a screw with a nut around it, I think, right? And then it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like it would like the nuts with the handles on them that you can like twist them a little better, I think.
Hmm.
And for some reason, it was all one mesh. And now that's actually one of the most important things that I try to think about when I'm working on a high poly is how is this constructed, right?
Hmm.
Like where that's what will lead you to like an amazing and believable high poly is when you think about how do these parts interact, what is different parts, like even when you're working on like a classic good old crate, right? You know, like a wooden crate.
Hmm.
Like think about where the boards would like how the corners maybe you have these interlocking corners on like these old military crates sometimes,
Yeah, yeah.
and you can have like such nice detail and believability, especially by having by thinking about that, and then yeah, it's never gonna bake down well if you have a screw, a nut, and like other stuff in like one. Yeah, I really do not understand what I was thinking there.
Well, me neither. That makes it. It's just inexperience. It's just that
Yeah,
like you go into a class, you get overloaded with so much information. Like this is what you need to keep in mind. This is how you bake. This is how you do this. This is how you model. And then you go home and it's just like, oh, I guess I'll do this and try to work your way through it while not being sure about it. And that's when you get
yeah,
like in my case like a jukebox that is one high poly mesh group and it's yeah, it was horrible.
yeah. I mean, I think the easiest way to just break it down is if it's separate parts in real life, make it separate parts as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah. I
Like
think
yeah,
that's the best thing to do. Is just like you said before, is look in how they would construct this thing in real life. Try to really go in depth. Like sometimes I hear people bring this up. Like you gotta be an expert on the subject before you start modeling it.
yeah, yeah. Especially if it's something really complicated.
Hmm. Yeah,
I was
I don't think you need to be like an expert and you have to go in like a wood turning classes or whatever you have to do or go,
yeah, no.
but at least familiarize yourself by just looking at the things, how they were constructed. And the thing I actually really love to do, if it is like say a military crate, look
Mm,
at YouTube videos, how they make them, like how they make the
mm,
connections, like have a look at it, look at the
yeah.
process, because there's a
And
lot of valuable information that you can get out of those things.
and the same thing applies for stuff that you're not taking from real life. So if you're making a sci-fi crate or whatever,
Hmm.
don't just make it like one big hull. Think about, would there be like a plate on the bottom that then the stuff is kind of attached to on the side? How would it be attached? Like, I don't know. I'm looking at my PC right now, and it's not just a box, right? Like before, I probably would have modeled this as one box. No, this is like a thing on the side that you can actually take off and look inside it, whatever. You have a front plate, you have a thing on the top with the holes for the fans in it and stuff. So yeah, look at how stuff in real life is made, and then you can also translate it to stuff that you're doing from a concept, or if you're working on a concept for something, or if you're just working on something like in your head.
Hmm.
It's yeah, yeah, just look at references even if you're not making something from a reference.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're gonna add this layer of believability to it. Even like you said, like if you're doing like out there sci-fi stuff, there's still a way that they construct those things. And if you create that red thread throughout your entire scene, you're gonna create this cohesion and just add this layer of believability to your entire scene.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the most important parts of
Hmm.
being a good 3D artist is making believable stuff. Because if it looks like a game, then, well, most of the time at least, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. There's also the opposite side of this because there are restrictions in games. So we kind of have to gamify stuff, but
Yeah,
we have to strike the balance between having something that's believable but then still works within all the restrictions, like say for instance metrics to have it working for AI, or
yeah.
cover metrics if you want to have the player take cover behind something. Those kind of specific things.
Is your washing machine running by any chance?
Yeah, it's running in the back.
Yeah, because I can hear it a little bit. I hope that your noise thing, like you can filter it out. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I'll make it work.
All right. Yeah, but definitely, it's of course a lot of the time there is restrictions that don't just come from art that you have to adhere to. But I mean, it's the same with performance stuff as well, right? I mean, actually, let me add something to the statement I made before. If something is a separate piece in real life, make it a separate piece in your high poly. It doesn't
Hmm.
need to be, you don't need to have every screw be separate, but at least bake it down so it looks like it was separate pieces. Wait, it is separate pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. This is
Yeah.
also something that comes with experience, right? Because there
Yeah.
are some things that you can just add to um, your high poly in one mesh, or you can add later on as just a texture. Like
Yeah.
those things are totally fine, but it's in the beginning it's really hard to get that that feel for that kind of stuff. So it would be better if you just try to construct it as it would be constructed in real life.
Yeah. And it definitely comes with experience. What you're saying, like I'm still a lot of the time I think about how to add detail. Like I don't know, I had a lot of on my Winchester that I made. I had a lot of markings. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
like really cool detailed, like not only writing, but there was like a buck, like a logo of a buck somewhere on the gun, and all that kind of stuff. I could have easily added um, in Substance Painter, but I chose to add it in ZBrush just for that extra. I mean, now by now you can do it with anchor points and whatever, but for that extra detail in the baked maps, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like your edgeware and for your generators. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, but then it meant that I had to have at least these parts of my high poly be like super detailed, like super high density of polys
Mm-hmm.
to hold that detail. So I was like I masked out a specific part of the mesh and then like added geo only there. And then it's like, is that worth it, or is it just easier to add that detail in Painter, right? So a lot of the time, your high poly doesn't need to be exactly what you want later, right? A lot of stuff you can still add, like you said, in a texture. But I think it's still a good practice to try and have as much detail and as much of that yeah, I mean just as much detail as you can in your high poly so
Mm-hmm.
that it gets
Yeah,
picked up by your
exactly.
bake.
It's also way easier to just get rid of it afterwards, especially if you're talking about small details like screws and all that stuff. If you don't need them, you can just delete them out of the high poly or separate them out, and then try two separate bakes, one with that detail and one without, and see what gives you the best result.
Yeah. And it's yeah, I don't know, sometimes it just looks weird when you add it in Substance. I don't know why, but some details just don't look right.
Yeah, it does, and it can introduce like a whole bunch of how to say it, like it
Visual noise.
yeah, visual noise, or like it doesn't feel right, or you have to do some additional tweaking to get it to look right because
Mm,
some of the edges are not as clean as you would get from a high poly baked down.
yeah.
So it introduces all that kind of stuff. So again, it kind of sucks that we have to default to this, but it's sort of trial and error, especially in the beginning. You just have to try and works best, and then you get to a point where you know which detail you can add and which you don't.
No.
It's kind of hard to give examples on a podcast anyway. We would need like
That's
visual
true.
examples too.
Yeah, I mean maybe at some point we can add like screenshots to the video, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be interesting. But then, yeah, we need to sync up what we're talking about with the screenshots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's 42 minutes in, and we actually have a question that sort of ties into the Unreal Engine 5 stuff, talking about
Hmm.
game art pipelines. So this is a question by Jack Shatterton. Do you think game art pipelines will naturally move towards more procedural workflows and less so about modeling and sculpting? If so, any advice on how to prepare that for the future?
Hmm. Great question, first of all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Do you wanna start?
if you got an answer ready, fire ahead. I can think.
Short answer, yes. I think procedural generation is just going to be more and more important. I mean, we've seen it in texturing, right? I don't think a lot of studios are still texturing with Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the same thing is inevitably going to happen with modeling, but I don't think that it's going to, like, modeling and sculpting are going to become obsolete. I don't think so at all, actually. I think there's still going to be people that are sitting in Max or Blender or whatever and doing a custom high poly, especially for stuff that's more stylized. Because
Yeah.
you know, if you want that handcrafted look, you're probably gonna have to put your hands on it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's I know procedural. I mean, I would like to combine that question maybe with photogrammetry as well, because
Yeah,
that's the thing
exactly.
that yeah, right. But procedural generation, I mean, Houdini in the last couple of years has definitely become uh, let's say, a more integral part of a lot of pipelines, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fair to say. Um, but yeah, I don't know if that's gonna be the standard modeling program. I think it's just going to become more and more important for
Yeah.
generating stuff in the level or whatever.
Yeah, the way that I see stuff is that we're still gonna have people modeling stuff, and then procedural workflows can add on to that in a
Mm.
certain way. It's gonna be a combination where you have one person modeling something in the style that they want for the game, and then maybe Houdini can turn it into like different variations still within that style, but they have like a benchmark asset that they can put in there. This is such a broad topic because I'm also talking more about like AI related stuff too, where we're talking about
Mm.
neural nets where they learn about the actual inputs and then try to create additional outputs from that. And also, photogrammetry is a great discussion because I think I've always felt that, especially with the later Battlefield games, Battlefront, they heavily use photogrammetry,
Yeah.
and I think there's gonna be a point where that market is so saturated that
Mm.
people are gonna deviate and sort of look for more uniquely visual experiences again.
Yeah. I mean, if we take a look at something like Disco Elysium, right?
Mm-hmm.
That game, there's no photogrammetry in it, but it still gets praised for how good it looks because it's not a realistic game visually. It's just a beautiful game. It's a completely different experience, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think people are definitely, like you said, are going to gravitate towards these experiences if just any game, they have access to mega scans, they have the possibility of probably, I mean, with photogrammetry technology evolving, they're going to have easier and easier times creating photogrammetry content.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, then people are going to get bored of it, I think, and
Yeah,
that
it's
that
it's a
might that might mean that a lot more games are going to become more stylized.
it's a difficult topic, right? Because I try to project like 5 years in the future, and I would think that people would get bored of just seeing photogrammetry. But maybe that's also because we're artists and we focus on that heavily. I mean, people
Mm,
are still going out to buy FIFA every year. Like, people are still going
yeah,
out to buy Call of Duty and the newest Battlefield.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I always wonder how much of this what we're telling now, like people moving from purely realistic photogrammetry style games more towards like stylized and more unique games. Um,
Yeah, maybe that's just our perspective on it.
maybe, but then on the other side, to like counteract myself a little bit, the indie game scene is also growing exponentially.
Mm.
So there must be a reason for that, right?
Yeah,
It's a tricky one.
I mean, and also, I mean that's the thing as well, right? So indie studios do now have a better access to a lot more ways of creating content quickly, or
Mm,
just taking stuff that's already there, like mega scans. So I think you're gonna see the same tree stump in a lot of games in the future, right? You know what I mean? Like it's gonna a lot of stuff is gonna share the same. A lot of indie games, at least, are gonna share a lot of the same assets
yeah, yeah.
um, from the same libraries, and then yeah, who knows? Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if people are gonna get bored of it. I mean, a beautiful, realistic environment to look at that. It doesn't become boring too quickly if it's really nice. So I don't
No,
know.
exactly, because I always think back to Far Cry 5, which is a game that I really loved for the open world.
Mm.
I didn't really like it for the story. There were some really annoying parts where you could just get shot out of a helicopter and get stunned and whatever and be pulled back into the story. But what I really liked about the
Oh yeah.
game is just walking around in the wilderness, and that game looked so goddamn pretty.
Yeah, I mean that I've had that experience with Far Cry 5 as well, and I've recently had it with Red Dead Redemption 2, right? So
Mm, yeah.
I pretty much started over, and that game, I mean that's a lot of open world games as well though, but it doesn't look amazing if you're close up to stuff. I mean, right? That's
Yeah.
because it's not possible. But with the lighting, with the VFX and everything around it, they just craft such a convincing and beautiful world.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
if
just
you
it
don't
it's
look too closely at each texture, it just looks stunning.
yeah, it sells you the complete picture instead of focusing on like the one thing.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the question from Jack, though,
Yes.
because I
Yes.
think we can offer some advice for actually getting into the industry, or like people that
Hmm.
just got into the industry. Because I think modeling and sculpting is still going to be a big part of the industry, like you said. Like it's sort of something that we hinted at before with the Unreal Engine 5 stuff. Like the bigger companies can't pivot their game workflows that quick.
Mm.
So even if you're trying to get into the industry now, obviously, knowing Houdini is going to give you a leg up, but it's
Yeah.
not like a solid requirement. Like, that's not the only thing that you need to know. Like,
No.
modeling and sculpting is still going to be super valid.
And UVs.
Yeah. UV Daddy's back. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, though.
Yeah. But and also, I mean, the thing is, even if you're making procedural content, you still have to have an understanding of modeling, right?
Yeah,
It's not. It's
definitely.
not. It's not like you have a make chair button,
Mm-hmm.
right? You still have to understand primitives and how you can shape them and what's the easiest way to like select something, you know what I mean, and like basic stuff, like if
Mm-hmm.
you, especially if you're making stuff procedurally, because you can't just click on every piece that you want to select in your software. You have to be like, okay, I want to select this element and then invert the selection and then remove this or whatever, and then I want to extrude that part of the model, let's say,
Yeah.
right? You still have to have an understanding of how modeling works if
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna use a procedural tool. And it's the same, it's the same with texturing. You can't, I mean, I guess you can just use smart materials and then put a generator on it in Substance Painter, but that's probably not gonna look as good as when somebody who knows how to author a texture and how to like make one from scratch
Yeah, like build it
is
up
gonna work on it.
realistically with all the layers
Yeah.
involved. And it's the same for the model, like you said. You still need that understanding, like we mentioned before, like you still need that understanding about how they would build a chair, like where the connections, like um, where does the handlebars go in or whatever. Like it can be anything. Like you
Yeah.
still need that underlying understanding. It's sort of I always think back to how I create my environments and composition is still something that I need. Like composition is never going to go away. Like that is always
Yeah.
going to be there, and that those are like the fundamentals of what you would need later on. And I guess I do really feel that it's the same thing for modeling just by itself. Like procedural stuff is going to be there for sure, but
Yeah.
the hand authored stuff, like the crafting that we do as artists, is still going to be there.
Yeah, I think it's gonna find its place more, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna become more obvious what, like, where it makes sense to utilize it and where we might want to go more of a classic route.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's gonna become a bigger part. It's gonna become, like, as the technology evolves, the amount of it we use will change.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not. I don't. At least right now, I don't think, and I hope that modeling and texturing stuff and sculpting stuff is not going to become obsolete too soon.
Yeah. I don't think so. And I don't think the procedural workflow is going to cause it to quote unquote go extinct.
Yeah.
I'm more curious about what the impact of AI is going to be. Because currently if you think about it this way, that all the stuff that we feed, like we have like a massive library of assets. But what if we feed that massive library of assets to an AI that then can learn about how those assets are and what the dimensions are, and then spit
Yeah.
out like new variations? I mean, that could be potential a big impact on like how the artist will author things for the next games.
Hmm.
If they can just change the parameters a bit and just say like, look, for this game, we want it to be set in like 1930s Asia, whatever, and then just change it up a little bit, like change the parameters, and then
Yeah.
like the AI will pull in like images to compare what that time was. I mean, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I feel like that is going to be a bigger impact on the industry than just the
Yeah.
procedural workflows.
Yeah. There was this demo that was like going around a while ago I don't know what the software was called, but it was some kind of AI that would set dress. Like I
Oh,
think they showed
Promethean
it in
AI.
like a teen's room, like with a skateboard or something
Yeah,
like that, you know.
yeah.
And you could like press the button and it would place the cabinets and the props around the thing, and it would look really great. But I mean, to tell like specific stories and stuff,
Mm,
it's still gonna need the touch of a person, at
yeah.
least for the time being.
You could see that in when they were showcasing that. It was called Promethean AI. I'll
There
link
we
it
go.
down in the description below. But I was looking at it recently again, and you could really see that it does a really good job at conveying like a 1980s bedroom or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah,
But then it's not telling anything. It's just it is a 1980s bedroom, and that's it.
yeah. And that's, I mean, that's great.
Yeah,
But I
because
think if you that's also like that's the props that they gave them, right?
yeah,
Like they didn't put I don't know, a new laptop in the props in there, and the AI decided, oh yeah, I'm not going to use this because this is supposed to be a 1980s bedroom. At least I don't expect that how it worked. So
I think it will work like that though. But
at some point it will, yeah. I just don't think that that's how what they did there, but I don't know.
yeah, true. I'm not really sure how they did that stuff. But
Yeah,
then the way that I see it is um that stuff's just setting up a room so that it looks like a 1980s bedroom from a child. Like that's the tedious stuff in my part. Because
oh, like
as
setting the parameters.
yeah, yeah, or just like getting the mood right. Right? You want to
Mm,
create the feeling that this was like a 1980s bedroom from a kid, then you don't have to do all that set dressing to get it look like it's a 1980s bedroom. And then, as an artist, I would go in and create the specific story that I want to tell.
yeah,
So it's not gonna just completely get rid of our job. It's just gonna get rid of the more tedious parts of it.
yeah. That's actually a lot of what procedurally generated stuff does for you, right? It just makes our job easier. That's
Yeah,
what it's there for.
exactly,
It doesn't.
exactly.
It's not there to replace our jobs. Essentially, it's just yeah to make the tedious parts easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
exactly,
mean
man.
that's yeah that's why stuff that like auto UVs exist. Not
Oh yeah, the stuff that you
not
really
to go
like.
yeah not to go back to UVs, but you know, I just that's the thing. In that case particularly, I just don't think that we're quite there yet, and it still needs a human touch at least
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. Um, but I mean, at some point, definitely, I don't think that we're gonna have to make our own UVs anymore, and that doesn't mean that there's not gonna be any jobs for artists. It just means that it's gonna become a lot faster to work on models.
Yeah, exactly. And that also means that there's still gonna be like really unique hero props, for instance, that still are gonna need the touch of an artist because
Yeah.
the automatic workflow doesn't work on those specific props.
Yeah,
Cause
and I mean the same, like not just UVs, but also retopology, for example, right?
mm-hmm.
Like there are a lot of good retopology tools out there, but I don't like automatic retopology. But at least from the people that I know that do like characters and stuff, they all still retopology by hand
Yeah.
because you know you need the right loops for animation
Mm-hmm.
and this and that. And I've seen some really cool tutorials for how to like set your like go into ZBrush and setting your polygroups and then have them generate loops where you
Oh
want
yeah,
them.
yeah.
But yeah, I just don't think that in the near future it's like there's still a little bit of margin of error in there, right? And a lot of the time you can't allow that, so it's best to just make it by hand. And I think until that little percentage of when it goes wrong is gone, then a lot of people are still gonna work on stuff by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think so too. Like these tools are gonna make our life easier. It's not they're gonna take our jobs away. I don't
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
happening. Like you see it in the amount of people getting into the industry. Like if we're just looking
yeah,
at Ubisoft, like how many people are there now? 16,000? Like that's
yeah,
fucking crazy, man.
yeah.
So yeah, the industry isn't like diminishing or like smalling down. It's still growing. So it's
Yeah, and then the thing is, it's not like our jobs are getting easier and the games stay the same. Not at all. The games are getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, if you compare a game from 20 years ago to a game from now, the world is like 100 times bigger or whatever, and it has, I don't know how much more detail, you know? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many people working on like AAA games. So it won't mean that there's just going to be like 20 people working on a game and the rest is going to be made by AI. It'll be more like it'll still be a couple hundred people working on a huge game, but it might just take 2 years instead of 3,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the innovations are gonna push the boundaries, like you said. That's basically what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Yeah, yeah, because every couple of years there's a new standard that's set by a particularly great game or by some kind of technology. So
Yeah, Witcher.
yeah,
Well, probably
and
the
I
next game
mean,
in line is Cyberpunk for that, right?
probably, yeah. And I'd say Red Dead was one of them, maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, back in the day it was Crisis, so
Yeah. That's still a meme till
that's.
this day.
But yeah, so it's there's always gonna be that one game that pushes the boundaries and then sets the standard for the other games to be like, well, I mean, I guess we'll have to step it up and
Mm-hmm.
make our game bigger, make our game more beautiful, more detailed,
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
means more people are gonna have to work on it.
Yeah, I love that we can just keep going on a roll for these questions. But that was
Yeah,
a really
it
good
was
one.
a good question. Yeah, it was a great question actually.
Yeah.
I really like that because I mean it's
something
that's
that we
part
think
of what
about
we
too.
do now. Yeah, of course. I don't want to lose my job to substance painters.
I'm just gonna
Or
be talking
to
to
some
substance
UV
painters.
layout. Yeah.
All right, man. Yeah, we're running over an hour now. I think this might be the
Ooh.
longest one. So
Goddamn.
it's time to call it an end. It was nice to have you on, man. It's
Totally.
I feel like every time we do an episode we get into a groove a little bit more. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll have to excuse myself with a washing machine in the back because yeah, that pissed me off. But
Yeah,
all right,
that'd be
man.
fine, I think.
Yeah, I
All
think
right.
so. It was nice talking to you again, man.
You do, man. Until next time.
See ya, buddy. So that's going to do it for today, people. Hope you enjoyed our little chat. If you want to hear more stuff like this, you can check out the playlist on the right and make sure to like and subscribe so we can get a feel for this type of content. We will continue to improve the audio quality and structure of this podcast going forward. If you're looking for more resources to help your journey as an environment artist, you can head over to the website, which is linked down in the description below, where you will find stuff like the weekly blog, tips and tricks, tutorials, and much more. Also, if you're interested in our portfolio, show notes, or the Beyond Extend website itself, then you can find those links in the description below too. But that's going to do it from our side. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to all of our awesome Patreon supporters who made this possible.